Scott Taylor, the data whisperer, has helped countless companies calm data down by enlightening business executives to the strategic value of master data and proper data management. He focuses on business alignment and the strategic why, rather than strategic implementation and the technical how. He acts as a principal consultant for Meta Consulting, a data story boutique. Scott will be speaking about data management is the foundation of digital transformation. Scott talks about the importance of having structured, standardized data throughout any data activity or process. Scott, welcome to Cloud Data Summit.
Thank you, Eric. Delighted to be here. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all virtually. Scott Taylor, the data whisperer. As Eric mentioned, I'm going to talk about the importance of data management as the foundation to digital transformation, as the foundation to managing data in the cloud, anywhere across your enterprise. So a little bit about me. It's my presentation, so I got a whole slide on me. As I mentioned, the data whisperer. If you haven't figured this out by now, spoiler alert, I don't do a lot of whispering. It's about calming data down, but it's about getting people excited and passionate and understanding the strategic value of proper data management. So I'm sort of a self-ascribed data management advocate out there and a spokesperson for that whole side of the space. I'm much more the why than the how. So I don't touch anything. I'm not a practitioner. I have tremendous respect for those of you out there who get it done, but you also have to explain the why, the business rationale. And my experience with the business side is if they don't understand and accept the why, they don't care about the how. So you've got to be able to tell that data story, which is my expertise, and I help organizations of all types, whether they're enterprises or service providers, actually tell that data story. Why is the value of their data really important to the folks who need to use it? So I do a lot of events, I do content, and I work with these tech brands and major global enterprises. And I think I'm kind of hardwired for the master data taxonomy, ontology space, because my parents told me when I was a kid, instead of building with my Lego blocks, I sorted them. I also have a lot of content. You see some screenshots up there. I've got my very famous puppet video. Here's my favorite puppet, the Chief Dog Officer. I'm the CDO. So you want to check him out for sure. That's about enough for him. And take a look at him on YouTube. We'll send you some links. I've got some cartoons on the backstory of data, of master data, and then a couple of really bad ideas you don't want to take a look at in the data business, but all kinds of content out there that we'll share with you. And I'm certainly pleased and proud to be #1 on the Thinkers 360 Global Thought Leaders list for big data. Ooh, so I guess I know what I'm talking about. Anyway, everything we do today turns to data. As your business and your business process go from analog to digital, from manual to automated, everything you do turns to data. And so enterprises of all sizes are struggling to make sense of it all. How do they manage all that data? How do they determine the truth and derive meaning from all that data to grow their business, to improve their business, to protect their business and put that data to work? That's what I talk about. Actually, that's what I talk about talking about. So what you're going to see today and hear today are the ways I explain the basic premises of data management, the importance of master data to the business side. I live in this niche between the tech side and the business side and try and be a translator between the two. And you've got to be able to tell that story, as I mentioned. Otherwise, you're not going to get the funding, you're not going to get the support, you're not going to get the access or the enterprise stakeholder engagement that you're looking for to support your data programs. And I'll pepper this a little bit with pictures of me in action on stage. I'm going to sit here on this stool to kind of, emote to you. But usually when we're not in this whole lockdown situation, I'm out there in the world on stage, really being passionate, animated, and about as dramatic as I can get around this really important topic, which is what do we do with all this data? So digital transformation, take a step back here, can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. But what it means to every organization is you've got more data now than you've ever had before. You need to find ways to manage it that you never did before, so your organization can do things it never dreamed of before. And it can take all different kinds of flavors and all different kinds of initiatives. But for me, that's the essence of what digital transformation is at a strategic level for every organization and the need for well-managed data. And of course, digital transformation has a lot of elements to it. There's the people side, the tech side, the process side, and the data side. And obviously, I'm going to focus squarely on the data portion of it. And even within that, the master data, structured, standardized, secure data foundation that powers all this. And a lot of organizations were kind of looking for that defining moment. How do we move from analog to digital? How do we start to really explore that digital transformation? I love these memes I've been seeing in LinkedIn and in social where on one side, who led the digital transformation of your company? Was it your CEO, your CTO, or COVID-19? I think a lot of organizations today are much more digitally transformed, thrown into that fire than they ever thought they might be ready for. And you can see that wrecking ball coming into that other guy going, oh, it's years away. No, it's not. It's here now. And as though people talk about that silver lining coming out of this pandemic situation, I think a lot of it's going to be focused on and being able to leverage the way people have been able to interact and do their business digitally in ways that they hadn't before. So master data is that foundation of digital transformation. Let me kind of break it down for you here. And a lot of the things you're going to see, you might know better how to actually implement them, but I feel like I'm an expert in how to describe them. And my experience comes from a very limited area. I'll tell you where it comes from. It comes from talking to every kind of company all across the earth that are involved in commerce. So if you're an enterprise on earth in commerce, then I think this is relevant to you. That's all I talk about. Those are the only folks I deal with. So obviously, little tongue in cheek here, I see these same common themes, these common challenges, these aspirations and wishes, these obstacles, they're ubiquitous. I try to clarify them and sort of genericize them so they're accessible to everyone. You may call some of the things I talk about different in your organization, but my role and my experience in decades here has been able to kind of sample and talk to so many organizations and see those themes, find those commonalities, hear those motifs, and realize we're all trying to do it at the essence, the same thing. So let me break down digital transformation for you in my Scott Taylor Data Whisperer way. I really see three phases, and they're fairly simple to describe, hard to execute, but see if this makes sense and is similar to what you're going through. Every organization starts in this first state, this legacy state, multiple silos. You've got sales, marketing, finance, operations. You've got different systems that fuel and power those different departments for different reasons and different use cases. And all of a sudden, you've got all these multiple silos, all these different verticals across your organization, and it inhibits you to be able to really unlock the power of your data in an integrated way. Now, legacy doesn't necessarily mean old. You might have just moved all your data to a wonderful cloud data warehouse, and you've got all the most modern technology and the latest approaches. But if that isn't integrated, if it isn't mastered, if it isn't standardized, then you're still in this siloed legacy state. You want to move from this legacy state to a place called an integrated enterprise. How do you start to cut across those silos? How do you begin to integrate the understanding you have about the most important parts of your business, which are truly your relationships? You want to start to become relationship-centric. Customer 360, product 360, some sort of holistic view, common view of customer, all that kind of terminology for me falls into this notion of relationship-centric. Okay, centric, circle, the geometry works for me, 360. You need a point in the middle, and that point in the middle is really that master data entity, that relationship. So now you've integrated stuff from your silos, and now you've got your whole enterprise with a common understanding of the most important parts of your business, but that's just inside. Now you want to move outside your organization into what I call a trust network across these connected ecosystems. Think about the parties you deal with, whether on the selling side, customers, partners, prospects, or on the manufacturing or creation side, your vendors, your suppliers. All these different parties all work together, if they work together seamlessly, within a connected ecosystem. Now, the universal requirements I've seen for people needing to go from a legacy state to integrated enterprise to connected ecosystems are two things: authenticated identity and a common data structure. So those universal requirements allow you to understand and know and validate, is this entity okay to deal with? And then once you've figured out that that entity is okay and is a relationship you want to manage, I need a common data structure to be able to share that information across parties. So legacy state, integrated enterprise, connected ecosystems, these universal requirements. Hopefully that makes sense. And that for me is kind of the framework we'll use when we talk about digital transformation. Now I'm going to talk now about the thing that powers it all, which I believe is master data. It's named that way on purpose. It is the most important data any organization has. It is the data in charge of your business. It is the data about those most important things, as I mentioned: customer, vendor, partner, prospect. It's about the brand that you represent, your brands, your products, your services, your offerings, your assets, the things you make, the people you sell to and buy from and partner with. That's what master data is. And if you don't have relationships and you don't manage them well, you don't have a business. So it's the most important data you have. Now, some people think, well, Scott, sales is more important as data. Sure, transactions are actually an intersection between a customer and a product. That's how you create a transaction record. So if those pieces underneath aren't well mastered, then those transactional data isn't going to work the way you think it is. So think about the atomic level of your data world. It's that master data, metadata, reference data, and I use those terms kind of interchangeably here because it's all about that structured foundational data at the bottom. They don't call it a foundation for nothing. Now, the actual definition of master data, always good to go to Wikipedia for that sort of thing. So master data, if you look it up in Wikipedia, it is the single source of common business data used across multiple systems, applications, and processes. I love that definition. I actually put it there. So it's been in Wikipedia for 10 years, so don't any of you fuss with it, okay? Just leave it alone. But that's a really simple, accessible definition. I think that makes sense. So if you're trying to describe what this is to somebody who has no idea what you're talking about, this is the kind of terminology I would suggest you use. Now, I love MDM wherever I can find it, so I couldn't help pulling off the road and taking a selfie in front of Michelson Door Manufacturing. So no matter what it stands for, I love MDM, I love master data. Now, some ways to think about it, again, really accessible, I think, to the business side. It is a common language. It's a common language for the most important parts of your business, relationships, and your brands. In a way, it's really about rows and columns. If you think about a really super fancy visualization technique, let's call it a table. All right, I know some of you graph people out there are rolling your eyes. Again, we're talking to the business here, okay? They deal with tables. Think about it. Tables are rows and columns. Columns are really easy. Rows are hard. Columns are what the rows are about. So you take two spreadsheets and you try and mash them together, you're going to have trouble making sure those columns align. Master data really are the columns. It's about truth and meaning, and actually in that order. You have to determine the truth first before you derive meaning. And I look at truth and determining the truth as data management and deriving meaning as analytics. It's about caring for your relationships, as we mentioned. You want to grow them, you want to improve them, you want to protect them. If you think about your business, almost everything you do most of the time with most of your data is about growing your business, improving your business, and protecting your business. You may have different names for that, but think about your business. If you're not doing those three, I actually don't know what you're doing. So those are the three things that your management, your leadership are focused on. And at the end of the day, it's about making good decisions. That's all people want to do with data, is make good decisions. But good decisions made on bad data are just bad decisions you don't know about yet. You can quote me on that one. So when you think about your data journey, and we all go on some sort of data journey, again, I kind of look at it at sort of this phylum level, right? Sort of the upper end phylum. If you remember your high school biology, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. I like taxonomies. At the phylum level, there's data management, data governance, data quality, master data, reference data, MDM, RDM, metadata, all that other stuff. That's determining the truth. And then there's business intelligence in all its iterations in terms of how it derives meaning. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science, data literacy, visualization, all the things you do with data. So you got data and analytics, you got data management, you got business intelligence, you got determining the truth, and you got deriving meaning. And again, it's not chicken or egg here. It is egg and omelet. You need that truth first before you derive any meaning. And that leads me to what I like to call the golden rule of data. Do upon your data as you would have it do upon you. G-I-G-O, garbage in, garbage out, goodness in, goodness out. It is irrefutable. It is as plain as Newtonian physics. It is as sure as gravity. What you put into something is what you're going to get out of it. So you put garbage into ERP, you get bad ERP. You put garbage into CRM, you get missed customer experiences. You put garbage into fintech, you might get a visit from the regulators. You put garbage into ML, bad robots. Garbage into BI, BS. Garbage into AI, AS. Artificial stupidity. No matter how you slice it, no matter how you dice it, the golden rule of data prevails. Do upon your data as you would have it do upon you. Now, the classic challenge, and again, I see this everywhere, and so tell me, if you will, if this looks familiar. You've got different departments, sales, marketing, finance, operations. You've got different regions. You might be global, work in all different kinds of areas on Earth. You might be local and work in a bunch of different markets, but you still have this difference between what you do globally and what you do locally, no matter how you define it. You've got different go-to-markets. How do you get the stuff you make to the people who buy it from you? Is it direct digitally, or do you make it in a factory and it goes in a truck, which goes to a warehouse, which goes to another truck, which goes in a store, which goes in a cart, which goes in somebody's kitchen? How do you get the stuff you make to the people who buy it? The more complicated that go-to-market, the more data problems you're going to have. And so that intricacy around your go-to-market, you want to take a look at. And then you've got more and more data coming in from third parties, whether it's to enrich or augment or provide more and more columns for those rows. And so this creates a situation, this classic situation, where multiple systems and workflows create disparate data with differing definitions that lack internal standards. Anybody have this problem? If we were here live, I know I could look out, or we were here in person, I know I could look out and see all kinds of heads nodding, because it happens every time. I will tell you, I can put this slide this afternoon in front of a CIO of a global Fortune 5,000 company, and they'll say, this is our problem. How'd you guess? Because it really is everywhere. Multiple systems and workflows create disparate data with differing definitions that lack internal standards. And so the answer is master data. I put it at the bottom, master data, as that most tangible output of a data management program. I put it on the bottom. I never put it on the sides or in the center or on the top, because it is, for all those different silos, it's the foundation. For all those different columns, it's the row. For all those different verticals, it's the horizontal. It really helps to draw it in a way that people understand the gravitas of what comes out of a data management program. That's a little more topical, but I noticed this, and what I find often is people talk about the need for this kind of data management, or data management in general, without actually saying it. It's kind of hidden in plain sight. So things like master data, reference data, metadata, the experts in the fields know a lot of problems business leaders talk about, or in this case, government leaders talk about, are actually solved by kinds of data that most of those leaders don't even realize exists. So listening to Governor Cuomo a couple weeks ago, he was talking about the situation in New York, and obviously was much worse than it is now. Thank goodness everybody's a whole lot better. But it was this unprecedented approach, he called it, where the hospitals were going to cooperate as one unified statewide healthcare system. That never happened before. And what he was talking about was private hospitals, public hospitals, disparate systems, multiple workflows, disparate data, lack of standards. This idea, and I felt like screaming through the screen there, you need MDM, you need data management, Gov. But that's the kind of thing that appears everywhere. So it's exciting to hear folks talk about that end value that we're all hoping for out of a data management program in the current events of today. Now, MDM, it's not all bed of roses. It can equal pain. I've seen it before. And a lot of the data practitioners I've talked to over the years, they don't use these kind of business euphemisms like, oh, we have a hurdle or we have a challenge. They talk about physical pain, and it hurts. I'm reminded of an anecdote early on in my career where I was selling to and talking to a sales organization. And the head of sales stood up at the end of the table and he said, Scott, that all sounds nice, but I can slice and dice my data any way I want to. All I have to do is push a button. And this really courageous sales ops person at the end of the table stood up and said, sir, I'm the button. You might be the button in your organization. And it hurts. It hurts when the national accounts people don't like the hierarchies. It hurts when your segmentation isn't right for your ABM program. It hurts when your executive leadership is trying to get out those quarterly reports and everybody's scrambling around with a million different sources. You don't even know what's right. That hurts. So to alleviate that pain, you need that MDM. Now, let me show you what pain looks like here. So if you're working at home, which a lot of you are, make sure your kids aren't in the room. Make sure nobody's looking at this, that they shouldn't, because this is graphic content here, ladies and gentlemen, all right? So it might be disturbing to some of you data stewards out there. Ready? There it is. I call it naked data because there's no place to hide. These are from embarrassingly large public companies, global organizations that don't know what they're doing with the New York Times, who can't spell Nestle the same way twice, who are having trouble with 7-Eleven. Take a look. If you can see it in the middle of that column, 7 equals 11. Not in base 10, it doesn't. So this is the problem. This is the challenge. I'm sure you all have seen or dealt with, or if you're a data scientist, you've had to munge your way through this kind of garbage. And this garbage goes in, we know what comes out. And this last column here came from a call file from a manufacturer who put individuals in the field into different stores. And so this was a summary of it, but when we look deeper into their file, which was input by all these sales folks, they had over 275 different configurations of the 7-Eleven banner name. Really. A lot of creativity in the field, none of it selling product. This is a mess. I feel like they were incentivized to come up with a new way to spell the 7-Eleven banner name. And if you think the software alone will fix it, you put this in Excel, you get July 11th. Unless, of course, you're in Europe, in which case you get November 7th. So no matter which way you do it, the software alone isn't going to fix it. Organizationally, you have to have the commitment to make sure that this garbage doesn't go in, and you follow that golden rule of data. So how do you start to make sense of all this? How do you start to structure this? And one of the first things people do in data management is really try to figure out, okay, the definition and the understanding and the structure around relationships, customer, vendor, partner, and their brands, products, services. So I do that by talking about what I call the 4 C's of master data: code, company, category, and country. Now, starting with code, unique identifier. Every record's got a code. You might have a ERP number, you might have a CRM number, you might have your own internal customer number, you might have a tax ID or a legal entity identifier or a finance code from one of the syndicated data providers, but every record has a code. I have a code, therefore I am, and I exist in a database. And theoretically, that code should uniquely identify that record. Then you need to know who it belongs to. So you need a company, some form of hierarchy. Build to, ship to, plan to, sell to, whatever levels you work at with whatever party you're talking about, to do very simple use cases like we're calling on the bottom right oval. Is it related to the bottom left oval? Really simple to say, hard to execute, but a classic challenge that people have in terms of understanding hierarchy. Then you have to know what kind of thing something is. And that's where category comes in. And there's all kinds of granular types of categories. There's type and subtype, channel, subchannel, trade channel. genre and subgenre. Again, depends on what vertical you're in. But category drives market penetration. It drives targeting. I'm really good with this kind of company. We want to find more of this kind of company. So you've got to have a category structure and a category taxonomy in there to drive that segmentation. And I haven't looked at any of your databases, but I've looked at a lot of them. And I would say every database I've looked at has a certain category called other. You have other? You might even have other, right? We ask people, why do they put other? They said, well, you know, it's so hard for the salespeople to spell miscellaneous. The only one I saw that didn't have other had an attribute value DK, and we asked them what that meant, and they said, don't know. Same as other. And then just because they all start with C, you need country or some form of geography, and all different kinds of geographic definitions as well. Might be zip code and postal code, city, state, province, media market, sales market, measurement market, all different configurations of geography. But if you apply these 4 C's, and as a data scientist, if you look for these 4 C's, most of the aggregation and integration you're going to do are at these levels. These 4 C's allow you to know where something is, what kind of thing it is, who owns it, and that it's unique. Think about all the data problems that go away if you've got that structure on all of your data. I'm going to take a Zen moment here and just think about all those data problems going away for you. Think about it. You know where everything is, you know what it is, you know who owns it, and you know it's unique. I hope that for you. Now, you might not call it these things. You might call it entity, hierarchy, sector, and geography. You might call it outlet, account, channel, and region. If it's product, it might roll up to a brand and a segment and a market. It's thing, parent, type, and place. But again, it's where something is, what it is, who it is, and that it's unique. These 4 C's are the basic structure for all master data. And structured data works harder than unstructured data. I don't care how cool you think your big data is, all your volume, velocity, and variety, and all your Hadoop stuff and whatever else you're going to do with all that data and all your graphs and all the rest of it. If the data isn't structured, it can't have the same value across your organization. You might do something nice in the sort of POC Petri dish, but structured data drives your organization. Your reporting is based on structured data. Your rows are the structure. So structured data works harder than unstructured data. Now, how do you start to manage this? And so opening this up, I'm going to talk about just kind of 5 pillars of data management. This isn't a formal data governance program. I know a lot of data governance experts much better than me who know how to put this sort of stuff in play. But again, my role, my part, my place I play in the data space is talking about it. Or in my case, talking about it. So here's how I think you can talk about the need or help understand the need for data management across these 5 pillars. Now, it's not rank order here, value, structure, connectability, coverage, and quality, but I'm going to end with quality because most people start with it. Right away, quality is the most emotional, subjective thing on this page. Everybody has some sort of opinion on quality. You get 10 people in the room, you get 11 quality definitions. So if you start there, which most people do, you may not get the kind of engagement you're looking for. So I start with value, of course. Business relevance. What is the business relevance of whatever data you are working on? And that's always the key thing to look at. Does this have relevance to the business? Is it fit for purpose? Does it actually help me make decisions at scale? That's what organizations want to do. They want to make decisions at scale. Once you get out of a POC, how does this really have an impact on what we're trying to do? Instead of doing it 10 times manually, how do we do it 100 times? Or instead of 1,000 times, how do we do it 1,000,000 times or 1,000,000,000 times? Decisions at scale is what drives a tremendous amount of value. Does it have a structure? Is it standardized in some way? It could be code, company, category, country, it can be whatever your data structure is, but it must have structure to unlock that value. Is it connectable? Does it work across your ecosystem, both internally and externally? How do you cut across those silos? How do you become part of that trust network and a connected ecosystem? It's if the data itself can connect. A lot of people confuse connecting and integration at the software layer with full integration. It's not. It has to connect at the data layer as well. Otherwise, two systems don't talk the same language when it comes to the content in those systems. So does it connect internally and externally across your departments, your regions, your go-to-markets, and especially also with your third parties who are sending you stuff? Does it have any kind of business coverage? Again, balance it out, whether it's 80-20, whether it's 90-10, whether it's 70-30, whichever way you want to do it. People ask me, so where do I start with this, Scott? I say start at the top. Are your top relationships and your top brands, are they structured? That gives the most value to your organization. So some people get a little bit too focused on having 100%. You'll never get there, but prioritize around the value it brings and the coverage of your business it has. So every record is not equal. A representative record of a global company is going to be different than just some little, single operator owner. So you want to make sure you balance that and have that coverage of your business, both the breadth and the depth, both local and global, if that's appropriate for you. But business coverage, I think, is a very important and often overlooked pillar and attribute in terms of evaluating and understanding the value of data management. And then finally, quality. I'm not trying to throw quality under the bus, but I'll tell you, it's hard to describe quality, but it is important. It's about timeliness. It's about what builds the trust. So yes, if you don't have the quality, people won't trust your data. If they don't trust it, they don't believe it's the truth. If it's not the truth, you're not going to get the meeting. That is pretty well documented in terms of that process. So you want to build that trust. Is there permissible use? Do you have a collection process that everybody understands? So these four pillars here, value, structure, connectability, coverage, and quality, for me, have helped me help others explain the value and understand the power of data management. And I do a lot of rants as well, in case you can't tell. Again, I told you, not a lot of whispering. You can find this one on YouTube and LinkedIn. And I talk about, if I had a minute with your CEO to talk about data quality, I wouldn't talk about quality. I'd say, you know what? We don't have the structure in place to manage our customers. And you're talking about transformative customer experience. We don't have the coverage of that data. We don't have a standardized, secure set of content to power that initiative that some big consultant came in to say, you know what, we got to move our whole business from selling our widgets to licensing the value of our widgets as a service. That's a tremendously strategic movement, but going from selling widgets and shipping them to licensing that value to an as a service model, if any of you are doing that, that's going to take a whole lot of data that you might not have. So when somebody talks to me about transforming their customer experience, I say, do you have the data to back it up? Probably not, if you don't have a well-mastered file underneath. So how do you start to put all this to work here? Now I'm going to talk about use cases. We all like to know, okay, how do you put this in play? How do you put this to work? So again, not formal McKinsey stuff here. This is not, you're not going to program and, build your reference data architecture off of this, but it's notions, it's use cases, it's buckets, it's ways I've seen people use data. And literally every way I've seen people use data falls into what I call the 8 8s. So we talked about the 3 phases. We talked about the 5 pillars. We talked about the 4 C's. Now we're going to talk about the 8 8s of putting your data to work. The first one at the pinnacle here is relate. You want to relate to your customers and prospects and partners and vendors and suppliers through your products and services. Everybody wants to build relationships. That's what your business is. No relationships, no business. Gotta keep that as a focus. But before you relate, you gotta validate. You gotta know whether that relationship is okay to have. You gotta know whether that brand is a valid entity. Is it deceptive? Is it a duplicate? Did you search before create? A big way that people get a lot of garbage in their system is they have 28 places to do a customer create process. That's the problem as it is. There's no searching before you create. So you got to validate an entity first before it starts to go into your system, because it can absolutely be the garbage we talked about. Then you want to integrate. How do you take everything you know about this thing and pull it all together? It could be virtually, it could be physically, it could be a hub, it could be federated. I'm not going to design your system for you, but the idea there is, how do I integrate all this stuff? That's the point. Then you want to aggregate. Start to roll things up. Most reporting is about some form of aggregation. How many customers do we have, and what markets are they in, and who owns them, and are they unduplicated? All those different aggregations that actually fall into those 4 C's: code, company, category, country. Those are a lot of the structure and a lot of the ways people roll stuff up. Aggregating up. Senior level, upper level reporting is almost entirely some form of aggregation. Then you want to interoperate. How do machines talk to other machines? That's where scale comes from, is when these things can happen automatically, when you can deliberately interoperate with other parties through their workflows and their systems. They may have an entirely separate system, but you've got the data, that universal requirement of authentic identity and a common data structure to interoperate between different software packages, between different hardware in different regions. Only the data can do that at that data layer. So this is drawn deliberately on purpose as a foundation: validate, integrate, aggregate, interoperate. Once you've got that foundation solid and you've determined that truth, then you can begin to derive meaning. Then you can evaluate. Then you can do AI. Then you can do ML. Then you can do business intelligence. Then you can do all that wonderful stuff and actually keep those data scientists from doing too much munging work and wrangling work, because they've got a solid foundation to build off of. So then you evaluate and provide your analysis. Once you evaluate, you want to communicate. You want to get people on the same page. Think about the words people use in the data management and master data space. Are we on the same page? Do we speak the same language? Do we have a common understanding? So you've got to communicate. Or do you walk into a meeting and you've got a report with 12, and the person across the table has 9, and 6 of them are different, and you're arguing about the definition of whatever, and before you know it, the meeting's over. So you've got to communicate. If you want to have a relationship, just ask anyone you love. You've got to communicate. So for those of you counting at home, there's only 7 here. So I got an 8th one here, which is circulate. Data in motion has value. Data has got to move. It can't get stuck in some silo. It can't be locked in a PDF. It can't be held by some guy who's been there 30 years who writes that special report that nobody else knows how to do. Those days are long over. And the only reason that guy can still write that report is because he hasn't been caught yet. You have to move data across an organization. You have to take it and move it as close to the point of decision as possible. You've got to circulate and enable the flow of that data, and structured data allows you to do that confidently and building it with trust. And that's me in full regalia here in action, screaming about the data's got to be in motion. It has got to move. So these 8 that I love, hopefully they help you too. They're an 9-part series on YouTube. We'll send you the link so you can take a look if you're interested in that stuff, to get a little more depth and a little more understanding, a little more examples around these 8. But if you find a way that you use data that doesn't really fall in any of those, I'd love to hear it, because they haven't been broken yet, but always open for a challenge. So wrapping it all up here, trying to sum up where we're going, let's take a look at this little graph. And the premise here is that across one axis, deeper interoperability, and across the y-axis, greater value, with the idea that the deeper your interoperability, the greater the value. So you start back with that first phase of digital transformation, that legacy state across multiple silos, not a lot of interoperability, not a lot of value. Moving to an integrated enterprise and being relationship-centric, more interoperability, more value. Finally, till you get that nirvana point of these connected ecosystems across a trust network, seamless interoperability. But the through line that I've noticed is this is really to move from legacy state to integrated enterprise to connected ecosystems is really doing, in essence, the same thing at higher and higher levels, is creating this foundation of semantic consistency at ever increasing levels. So it's the same thing, but done at a broader scope. And so think about it, in that legacy state, you've got different methodologies you're trying to integrate, processes, workflows, spreadsheets. Then you go across to departments, apps, and platforms. Then you go to enterprises, value chains, verticals, entire marketplaces working off that same data. And it only works when you have these universal requirements met of authentic identity, a common data structure for those most important relationships and brand elements: customer, vendor, partner, prospect, brand, product, service, asset, offering. Simple stuff. Hopefully that makes sense. And think about it. A really good example of this working is the UPC, the Universal Product Code. Think about that barcode that's on every package you see in a supermarket, on every bag, box, bottle, tube that you put in your cart. It allows thousands of manufacturers and millions of products across tens of thousands, if not millions of locations, across a whole disparate array of different software packages and different hardware packages. But every one of them can take any one of those elements and you bring it to the front of the store and you put it on the checkout belt, and the checkout checker takes it and just goes beep. That little beep. That is master data in action. Imagine if it didn't work. And that only happens because it, beep, authenticate the identity and a common data structure. It works. So data management as the foundation of digital transformation provides semantic consistency, enables deeper interoperability, and creates greater value. In case you're wondering whether this is relevant still, in case you're wondering whether this might go out of fashion, in case you're wondering if there's some new super cool analytics graph hub fabric mesh that's going to come out and replace all this, let me give you my perspective. If you take a look at all these bubbles here, these are the hot topics that are going on now, whether it's, data privacy regulations or moving to the cloud or globalization, know your customer, KYC if you're in the finance space, artificial intelligence, ABM, account-based marketing if you're in marketing, the IoT and Internet of Things, transforming your CX, or the entire fourth industrial revolution. None of these things work without data management. None of these things work without a strong, standardized, secure, structured set of content underneath. They just don't. So I submit to you, data management is macro trend agnostic. No matter where we were, no matter where we are now, no matter where we're going, you're still going to need it. So we could have filled these bubbles with something different 5 years ago. We'll fill them with something different 10 years from now. But I'll tell you, if I'm still here, data management will be that foundation. It's an absolutely mandatory requirement. So hopefully these frameworks, these things kind of help you think it through, kind of help you tell your data story, or maybe from a side of the business that's more on the analytics side and didn't realize the work that has to go into it, the value and the things you're looking for. But think about if they work, my 4 C's, the 5 pillars, the 8 eights, the 3 phases. But if you remember anything, it's about truth and meaning. Determine the truth first before you derive meaning, and you'll always be in a better place. So hopefully these nuggets, as I said, kind of help you. I will say again, and hopefully I prove that the challenges you have are more the same than they are different. I believe data and analytics can change the nature of your business. There's not a lot of folks out there, and there's not a lot of departments or opportunities that can do that. So if you're excited about data as I am, it really can change the absolute nature of your business. And master data, it can be your hero. I can't show it to you now, but actually if you search for master data superhero, the first hit you will see is the cartoon I have, which is the master data superhero backstory on YouTube. So hopefully you'll enjoy that as well. But these things are really what make all the other stuff that gets a disproportionate amount of the limelight, if I can say that, go. So as everything we do turns to data, this is your opportunity. So I want to thank you for sitting in. I want to thank you for joining the Cloud Data Summit. I want to thank Eric and the team for letting me participate here. Follow me on LinkedIn. If you put your phone right now up to the screen, that QR code will take you right to my profile. Happy to have you follow me. Take a look at my YouTube channel. I got 50 videos on there with all kinds of ways to talk about data that hopefully you found enlightening and helpful. If you want to share it with somebody, if it will help you tell your story, then I did my job today. And you can't steal it from me because I'm giving it to you. Now, if you need particular help in your enterprise, shameless plug, it's what I do for a living. So I can translate into the way you go to market. But before that, take a look at what I got out there and hopefully it'll help you. So thank you all very much. Happy to take some questions and thrilled to be part of this event.
All right, thank you very much, Scott. That was a great and very energetic presentation. And certainly, as anybody has any questions, go ahead and post those in chat. And then, we are taking questions on Twitter as well. So, please post those hashtag Cloud Data Summit, and then we'll go ahead and present those to Scott. And as of right now, a lot of people might be sitting here thinking, how is this relevant to what we're talking about on a broader theme at Cloud Data Summit, which is really about the transformation that the cloud brings to organizations, right? And and I think you phrased it best, Scott. It's garbage in, garbage out. And if you can't build anything on a loose foundation. And so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how great our machine learning models might be, or how great our analytic solutions might be. If we're starting that on poor master data, then it's probably not going to be a success, right? And we're not going to be reporting accurate data. So I think that's kind of really the overarching message, and really why we feel that this is such an important topic. And it is something that we keep bringing up at Cloud Data Summit, because we need to make sure that we don't lose sight of master data, that we don't lose sight of data quality and data stewards and all of the pieces that go into making sure that you do have clean data. So all of your efforts, whether they're analytics based, or whether they're operational, whether they're for AI models or whatever they're for, are going to be accurate. So that's really kind of the most important thing.
I want to mention something about sort of this cloud transformation. And I think people have a misinterpretation that just if you've moved stuff to the cloud, that all of a sudden the data is better. It's not, right?
It's
so
not.
That movement, obviously it makes it more accessible to an organization. That's wonderful, speed, all these other great technical and strategic aspects that moving to the cloud does. But if you think about the cloud as essentially a place to put stuff, if I took all my junk around my house, from my attic and my back bedroom and my basement, and I moved it all to one big storage locker, it didn't clean anything up. So you've got to make sure moving it to the cloud doesn't mean the data is managed well. It still needs those principles that we just talked about.
However, you did manage to free up a room in your house, right?
Yeah, it did free up some room in my house, right? I have, now I rent instead of buy. I mean, all kinds of great, lots of economic benefits, but you open up that storage locker and it all comes falling out.
Exactly.
There's still some challenges. So, yeah.
And so we do have a couple of questions that.
Oh, great.
So here's a good one. What advice would you give to a data scientist who has trouble explaining data issues to the business?
You really have to focus on the why instead of the how. And I think a lot of practitioners out there, a lot of data scientists are really proud of their methodology. So they're ready to go in and talk about, here's what I did, and here are the 15 mistakes I made and how I fixed them, and take them through this whole history to the point where they have this insight or this challenge or this opportunity they want to bring to the business folks. Forget all that. They don't care. They care about what is this insight and how's it going to help me take action. And frankly, you want to go in there going, okay, what action needs to be taken? Classic management. You don't come in and say, I have a problem. You come in and say, there's a challenge here and we got to figure out how to solve it. But you want to focus on forward thinking, and you don't want to dwell too much into that methodological part. As proud as you should be of it, and there's a place for it if somebody does challenge it later, but don't start there. Nobody wants to hear that story. You go through the 157 steps, believe me, a CEO is going to stop you at like step 4 and go, why should I care?
So what you're saying is get to the point, right?
Yeah, get to the point. Yeah.
Get to the point and present it concisely. Present the results, not the roadmap, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's a real challenge. Again, the roadmap's there. You'll, with your own team, you may got to go through that. There's not saying you don't have the how, but executives that I've talked to want to know, okay, what action should I take? Which is an opportunity. They want, you want to get a commitment out of these executives or these leadership or the business side to engage, and you want to show them where that goes, and you want to show how you can help them, and keep it as your magic, okay? And you don't have to take them through, because their eyes will glaze over. You'll lose them.
Because they just want the bottom line.
Yeah, yeah. They want, I think a lot of them want the story around it,
Right.
or where it goes. So it's not just simply, okay, XYZ, but again, it's just thinking about, is it the methodology, how I got here, or is it why we should move forward? I'm
Bingo.
about why we should move forward. That's where your story starts with those executives.
Absolutely. I think that's great. So next question that we have here. How would you deal with stakeholders that don't believe they have data problems?
Are there people who don't believe they have data problems? If you're an enterprise and you have data, you've got data problems. So, first they can start by quoting me on that one, if that helps, but they're always in there. And in some cases, you want to do this kind of shame report, right? Do you have a version of that 7-Eleven slide? Everybody does. So that can kind of show them, look, you wanted us to do something with 7-Eleven, and I can't even, it's taking me all week to get this done. And it's maybe contrary to what I said before about not showing the how, but now you're showing what you need to do to actually get that answer. And so we want to fix this systemic issue. And this issue comes from you thinking there's no data problem, so you just key in whatever you want. There's residual effects to this that are having a pretty big impact on what we're trying to do. So sometimes you got to shame people into it. I sold a lot of data services, and part of what I did, that 7-Eleven slide was a live thing at one point. And we had this part of the process where we affectionately referred to it as telling somebody their baby's ugly, right? Here's your data. It's not good. So sometimes you just got to kind of bite the bullet and go, look, this is, everybody's got data problems. You got to go in there and realize that. So.
Absolutely. So that's a great summary. Next question that we have here is, what real problems have you seen caused by poor data management?
I think data breaches in some form are data management problems, right? I don't know all the technical side, but talking to security people, a lot of risk comes from being able to, not being able to authenticate identity, right, in a variety of ways. And so not having authenticated identity, which means somebody fakes the identity or whatever that process is, that comes from, at times, not having well-managed data, not having the strength of the systems and the data to protect themselves. So a lot of this risk out there, it can come from bad data, whether it's bad data that doesn't authenticate the identity, whether it's a bad or misunderstanding of, as I mentioned, those 4 C's. A lot of them are in there. I've got, 2 entities that are related to each other, and I'm going to send somebody to go make a big fancy presentation on one of them, and yet it's related to another relationship we have that's gone bad debt. So these are risks that people have that you can mitigate and control by having better data. May sound like a cliche or may sound so obvious, but better data makes things better.
Excellent, and thank you very much, Scott. We are out of time, and we'll go ahead and wrap this up here, and let's move over to the Q&A session for more questions, where we can have a little bit more of an open conversation about some of these things with the audience.
Great.
And we'll wrap this up. Thank you very much, Scott, and
Sure.
everyone hop over to the